think I'm very much a process-driven person, to where there's constant evolution to the game, constant nuances to it tactically that you can change, adapt, evolve depending on the opponent. Your personnel, obviously in college, you're graduating kids every year, bringing new kids in, so there's just this constant reflection. Walking in particularly into a new environment and then trying to create it into one that you want, I think for me, you have to give the players ownership and a voice in that. It's hard to go into a place and be like, this is how we're doing it, jump on board. I think our big thing going into pre-season was, let's make sure that every session is tactically driven, but then there's certain coaching principles within it that are going to look at the technical piece, because without the execution, we can't execute the tactical piece anyway.
Hello coaches, welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach podcast. This week we are joined by head coach at Division 1 Coastal Carolina, Joe Chubb. Over the last year, I've been fortunate enough to watch Joe's team play, watch them train, and also have a lot of conversations with her around her philosophy. So I wanted to get her on because I believe that she connects the dots between philosophy, game model, and training methodology at a really, really high level. So if you're going into the pre-season stage, or if you're starting your season, you're going to love this conversation. Massive thanks to Joe for sharing. And before we jump in, a huge thank you to Soccer Coach Weekly. If you're a busy grassroots coach, they're ready to go session plans, save time, and keep players engaged. Modern Soccer Coach listeners will get 50% off. What an offer that is, by the way. 50% off a full year subscription. Just visit soccercoachweekly.net/SCW-USA. Don't worry, I will put the link below. And use the code Gary50. What a code that is. Gary50 for 50% off. Plan fast, coach smart with Soccer Coach Weekly. Huge thanks to them for the support for the podcast. Here is Joe. Enjoy. Joe, thank you so much for joining me today. Modern Soccer Coach podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate. Looking forward to it.
Beautiful campus, 110 degrees.
Yeah, and you wanted to sit outside.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna get stuck into the game model, pre-season planning. I feel as if I'm in pre-season, so this is a good realistic picture of it. Before we get into the game model, it's clear to see that you have strong views on how you want the game played. It actually, from my perception of you, it's probably your biggest strength, is I want to play the game this way, is how I see it. But I've never asked you, which I probably should have up until now, where has that come from? What's been the biggest shaper in how you see the game?
It's an interesting one, because I think being English, you grow up around it all the time. For me it was play on a Sunday, go to the pub and watch a game afterwards, and it's always on, it's everywhere. My parents, my grandparents, everyone has a team, so you're around it all the time from such a young age. But I think it's more very find any style of play incredibly respectful, especially you look over the past 10 years in England, every style of play has won the Premier League, for example. There's no right way to play it. For me, I think, like myself as a player, watching certain players growing up, and then I start to play, you start to want to emulate certain players, certain movements, and I think it's no different as a coach. So watching the game as much as I do, you start to look at, obviously this is some big names in here, but you look at the Peps, you look at De Zerbi and stuff, and there's such a room for development in it. I don't think there's a ceiling to play in a way that these types of teams are playing. I think I'm very much a process-driven person, to where there's constant evolution to the game, constant nuances to it tactically that you can change, adapt, evolve depending on the opponent. Your personnel, obviously in college, you're graduating kids every year, bringing new kids in, so there's just this constant reflection of, what am I losing? What did they give us? What holes do we have? What areas of both sides of the ball are we limited on? What can we do to inject a little something different, some unpredictability, whilst not losing the identity that we have? The other day I was reading a book, and it said something like, the script doesn't change, the style of play doesn't change, but the actors, the personnel does every year, particularly in college. So you've got to be able to adapt as a coach and figure out how they best fit into this style of play, but without losing their freedom as well. So I think it's in college, it's challenging, but I think I love to problem solve. I love to provide that to the players every day in training, and I think it's a way of playing that allows them to have a freedom within it, but have to problem solve, and they're challenged every day, which I think is exciting for them.
So a strong view of the game, but then also respect to the variables that are involved in terms of schedule, players available, etc.
Yeah, and style of play in college over here. I think even for us, like the league that we play in, there's every style of soccer is present, which is fantastic as a coach. It means that we have to be tactically knowledgeable enough to adapt, to figure out how to neutralise threats, how to exploit weaknesses. And one game we're playing against a team that want to have the ball all the time, that want to control the game by having the ball. The next it's a team that are going to press you really, really high and don't care to have the ball in certain areas of the pitch, but want to win it in certain areas. Some are a little more direct, perhaps, where they're looking and relying on the athletic abilities of their players. So for us, it's how can we maintain who we are without conforming to the opponent, but how can we use the style of play that we have, use what we believe to be a way that can progress the players and develop the players to help them succeed.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think what Pep and De Zerbi that you mentioned there, I think what they've done by coming to England is kind of challenging the thought that you needed X players to be able to play a certain system.
Right.
And I thought that was a really good message for coaches. And not to say that Ruben Araman is not doing that there, but there also seems to be a counter thought, which is what he's saying is like, listen, when I get the players who can play this, you watch me. Yeah. But until then, it's going to be people using this word. I even heard it last night, and I really don't like it. Suffering. There's going to be suffering. People think like, oh, that's a new cool word for just being bang average.
Yeah, yeah.
But one reason why I'm going here is because I still think that almost still exists in our culture just generally over here. It's like, well, you can only do with what you've got. Right. What's your thought around the continuum of like, no, you can get a player to a style?
Yeah, I think it depends what type of coach you are. I know I can only speak for me. I'm very development driven. So actually, I like taking a player that's at this point right now and then providing them with a vision of, obviously it's part of a recruitment piece, right? But if you play here, this is the style of play, this is the environment. I think the environment is crucial that we're going to put you in every day because we care about your development. So you're going to get coaches and they have to be. I think particularly now with the college landscape the way it is to be, we have to win. We have to win now. I fully believe in what my staff and I are doing. I fully believe that the way that we're playing, the result is hopefully going to be a byproduct of what we're doing every day. So it allows us to focus on the everyday. It allows us to look at a player and be like, they have these tools. I'd be lying if I said they didn't have to probably have a certain amount of tools going in. And obviously when we go to these recruiting events and we're looking for certain pieces in certain positions as a starting point, but the idea of evolving a player from a freshman to a senior is incredibly fulfilling for us. And I think if we have that development in mind, then not we can fit anyone into it. There has to be a level of buy-in, and I think that's the piece that we tune into the most, is helping them buy in, helping them. This is where you are. This is where we feel you can be. This is how we're going to get you there.
Brings me along nicely. So then, when you got here and you have the vision and the idea in your head of what you want to produce, was the biggest challenge buy-in, or was the biggest challenge change and getting them to like almost moulding that there, advancing that?
I think everyone finds change a little scary. I think the biggest thing for me coming in when I came here a couple of years ago was, one, to come in with a completely open mind. I'm not going to come in and be like, right, this is how we're going to win, this is what we're going to do. I don't think that would have been welcomed. I don't think it would have been successful. I think it was coming with a complete open mind. You can't really know what an environment is until you're in it. So it was kind of a let's observe the little behaviours, the little tendencies of the players as individuals. Let's see how they communicate and interact with each other on a collective basis. And then a lot of feedback, a lot of questions. I mean, we did pre-practice questionnaires, post-practice questionnaires. Yes, a lot of it based on, load and obviously external factors, but also what are you enjoying about the sessions? What do you want to change? So giving them a level of ownership early on, whilst kind of using that to then mould them to what we wanted to do. We knew it wasn't gonna be an overnight fix, but that's again going back to this idea of being process driven. I want to create something sustainable. That's going to take time. Like, we're still in the early stages of that building, honestly. And I think it was just, getting the buy-in, getting the commitment, getting the ownership, which was really hard because we had a lot of seniors that first year I was here. And if we are to be successful, I fully believe that the first couple of groups we've had they've laid that foundation. But that first group, we're never going to get the positive benefits of that because they had 1 year and then they're gone. So the biggest thing was helping and hoping that they would buy into this idea of, you're laying this foundation. The goal that first year was, how can we have a style of play that is recognisable, so that now when we're selling this vision and this idea of development, of style of play, of sustainable success, we've got a foundation to build from. Otherwise, I'm just like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And then they're like, where's the evidence to back that up? So although we didn't necessarily get the results that I think everybody wanted, it was a positive environment and a positive foundation to begin with, because it showed what we were trying to do. We weren't so successful all the time in doing it, but it gave us a good foundation to then bring in players who want to play this way, who are bought into that developmental aspect of them as an individual and as a collective to hopefully build something sustainable.
Very interesting. I didn't know about that there with the questionnaires.
Yeah, I think it's important to, in college, we've got players from all over the country, all over the world. So to mesh those different types of cultures is a challenge in itself, but it's so incredibly rewarding. Obviously myself, I come over here to play in college and and have friends from all over the country, and from my college, from my coaching experience so far, like we have friends that are, actually the other day at my previous school, 3 of them one is English, one's Dutch and one's American. They all went on holiday together in Italy, and I was like, they would never have known each other if they didn't have that experience. So there's so many external rewards to doing it as well, but walking in particularly into a new environment and then trying to create it into one that you want, I think for me, you have to give the players ownership and a voice in that, to where it's hard to go into a place and be like, this is how we're doing it, jump on board. Like, I don't necessarily deserve them to just jump on board without knowing my why, my background, my reasoning for doing what I want to do. So they have to know I'm so invested in them in order to get them to invest into me, into the staff, into what we're trying to do.
Which is a lot harder, from being in that position myself, and definitely when you're going in and trying to implement, you almost again naturally go into teacher mode, which then becomes the monologues rather than the open discussions. What format were you using? Were you using those questionnaires as just like, here's the paper and a bit of pen, or were you getting them to fill it out on apps, or what were you doing?
Yeah, it was online at the time. It was just a Google form, honestly, I think. And it was it's one of them things that needs to become a habit. So we're, texting them an hour before training, like, hey, remember the questionnaire? And it was completely voluntary. It wasn't going to be something that I mandated again. Some were gonna buy into change. Some were gonna buy into what we were doing quicker than others, and that's completely fine. That's completely understandable. So it was, but the more comfortable they got with it, like the players got with it, I think the more open they were to providing additional feedback. I mean, even for me, like at the end of last season, for example, we put out a questionnaire, and it was like, I want you to say about every member of staff, the training sessions, the film, the travel, all of it. It can be anonymous at that point. Critique it as much as you want, because I want to continuously make the program better. And I think, they know and it's something that we talk about. I'm going to listen always. Does it always mean it's going to lead to change? No, but you're always going to know why we're choosing to make the decisions we are, because with them knowing the reason why, even if they don't agree with it, the buy-in's going to be greater.
I don't know if you saw Pochettino's press conference. I'm putting all these hot topics. Pochettino's press conference last week on the Pulisic whole thing, and the whole carry on, him jumping on the interview and saying, I don't know the reason why I offered to play 2 friendlies. Don't know why they didn't let me do it. And Pochettino's reaction was, he doesn't need to know why. It's my decision. Yeah. Now, Pochettino, again, from my perception, would be, not maybe at the moment, because it was a bit rocky at the moment, but definitely in the past would have been the player's type of quite warm personality in it there. Yeah. When you're saying there about on the front end, you have the ability to ask questions. How do you then deal with, do you then find yourself with every decision you make, playing time, or do you feel yourself a responsibility to then inform and explain, or is it like, hey, listen, on the front end, yeah, this is all welcome, but then you got to respect a certain point where I make the decision?
Yeah, I think there has to be limitations to an extent. As much as I think I would love to be able to explain every single decision or every single reason why someone's playing, but I think it's obviously tough. Like the idea of, as cliche as it is, the door's always open. Happy to have those conversations, but obviously players have to be willing to receive the feedback as well. I think we as a staff, we do a really good job, and we this year in particular want to zone in a lot more into some individual development. I think I as a coach in the past have got lost in, particularly in the fall, we want to, like, what is this opponent doing? How can we exploit this? How can we neutralise this? We've got to build this way, we've got to press this way, which is, we've got to win games. So it's a factor for sure, but I think with the staff that I have now, we have some really great complementary strengths to where I've got staff members that are so invested in individual development of our players, which I love, and therefore we've kind of figured out a way to make sure that everyone is getting very continual feedback to where hopefully it answers a lot of questions for them, so that they're not having to continuously ask them. I think something that you can run into in college, I can't speak for the men's side, but I know as a female to an extent, to where if you're not given the answers, you're gonna come to assumptions and you're gonna fill in the gaps yourself, and dependent on what your current role is on the team and how you feel about it is going to depend what those gap fillers are. So if you're not playing, it's probably not going to be the most positive. So I think if we can try to recognise and observe that on the front end and give them the feedback and the development, whether it's film, whether it's an IDP, whatever it is, that they can then go and work on it, then it puts a lot of that ownership back into their hands, which is important as well.
Hello coaches, we'll take a quick break here. This is a special offer for the grassroots coaches. We all know how hard it is to keep the players engaged and run really great sessions when you are tight on time. That's why we are proud to team up with Soccer Coach Weekly. Since 2006, they've helped over 50,000 coaches, parents and teachers from all around the world. And now they've redesigned everything with US volunteer coaches in mind. Each week you'll get proven practice plans, fun small-sided games, and coaching advice that's easy to use and right off your phone or laptop. As a listener of the Modern Soccer Coach podcast, you will get 50% off. Yes, that's right, 50% off a full year of premium access. Just go to soccercoachweekly.net/SCW-USA. Don't worry, I'll put the link in the comments below and in the podcast description notes. And use the code Gary50. Again, Gary50 for 50% off. Gary50, 50% off. What an offer that is. Plan fast, coach smart with Soccer Coach Weekly. Please check them out. Links are below. Back to Joe. I look at college now, and there's certain pieces of it that I think make it really, really difficult for those components. Like obviously the game schedule, but even with what you're saying there about filling in the gaps, if I'm number 24 on a Manchester United squad, I get the team probably, and they do start doing the shape and stuff. I get a good feeling about that 3 days before it. But 24 hours before it, I know that I'm probably going to be wearing a suit, sitting in the stand. You go to the college game and you have players 1 through 24, 28, whatever it is today, are all dressed.
Yeah.
So with that there, even if they haven't played a minute, there probably is an expectation at some level that today is going to be the day for that there.
Yeah.
Playing time is it still a big issue, the biggest issue of not having enough minutes to get people?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've never, other than what I inherited from here, I've never wanted to carry a massive roster anyway. So, I mean, a lot of the roster cap pieces we had 28 last year anyway, so we're good. But I think it's, and we even implemented some stuff early on here where, and again, it was to try and shift the culture a little bit and make it competitive. And so we, regardless, dressed 22. So and it was this idea of, okay, the goal is to get into the 22 that dress for game day. We're not a massive rotating team. So say you're using 16 players a game, maybe 16, 17 players. The next goal is be in that 16, 17. The next is get into the starting 11, and then the toughest piece is to stay there. So it kind of gave this goal for them to work towards. It's not without its difficulties, because I fully understand there's an external perception, there's photos, there's videos on social media, and you don't want to be standing on the sideline not dressed. So I completely understand it come with its difficulties. At that moment, I favoured this idea of competitiveness and enhancing that within my training sessions. In hindsight, was it best for culture at that point? Maybe not. But it's one of those where it's something to reflect on and think about this year. I think we're leaning towards not doing it this year, but I think I'm also at a point where a greater amount of our current players were recruited by us. Not to say that it's even the players that weren't are fully bought into what we have now, but it's this idea and this understanding going in that this is what you signed up for, whereas we're not changing things on them last minute. So I think it creates a different environment there. But it's not without its difficulties, for sure.
Very hard.
Really hard. Really
Especially
tough.
the piece of, okay, so the next day, again, the science would lead you towards, all right, well then if you're playing 16 in major minutes, then you go and spend some time with those other 10, 12 players. But I'm guessing that's also going to be that's not the time where they come in and there's an emotional reaction from they're going to come in a certain headspace that they're coming down.
Yeah.
And if you meet them here as well, that's not necessarily a development space. It's difficult too. It's
really tough to manage. Obviously, individually, you want to try and meet them where they are, and you want to always lead with a high level of empathy. And I was when I played, I was really fortunate, particularly in college, to play high level minutes. But growing up, I've been in a situation where I didn't really play, and I understand how tough it is. And then that was, without dating myself, that was in an era where social media wasn't as big as it is now. So I completely understand the struggles that it has. And obviously, like any coach, if I could play everybody, I would. But obviously, you're put in a situation. And for us, again, it attacks this environment piece where put yourself in a situation where I can't not play you, right? So it's this idea of are you attacking every day? Are you being your best you can every day? Are you showing up every day? Understand in college there's so many external factors and stresses that these kids have, but are you able to compete daily? Because chances are, if you do, you're probably going to contribute in some form or fashion. Not the case for everyone. Again, I can't speak for everybody, but I think, again, we control what we can, and that's the environment that we create every day. And then the playing time, the performance, and hopefully the result, again, is a byproduct of the work that we do during the week.
You mentioned earlier about the different styles in the conference. Again, college has a reputation of, and I think it's harsh, again, being out of it. I think it's difficult where college basketball is 100 miles an hour, college football is game day. There's always going to be a cultural piece to college soccer, 2 games a week or whatever it is, and 10 conference games and 20 games total, where your season hangs in the balance, is going to play a part in how the game is not going to be an Italian Serie A game and played at that speed. But then other people say, well, listen, it's way too transitional. It's it's more direct, more results based, whatever it is. How, when you're looking at implementing you say like a true identity, a system that you can kind of all get behind, how difficult is that dynamic? Do you find yourself pushing against the college play, or do you think it's changed now that there are a variety of styles?
I do. I think there is a big variety. Like you said, maybe not so much before, but even, I mean, you look at like top level teams, like teams that are winning the national championship every year. Like even that's been an array of styles over the past few years. So I think it's whether it's conference to conference, there's still certain conferences where you'd say a good chunk of them are playing in a certain way, and it is a far more transitional. But honestly, it's one thing that even drew me to this job and drew me to the conference we're in, because you look at, there's, even top of my head, I'm like, there's 3-4 teams where, and you look at obviously the stats and stuff afterwards, like they don't care to have a ton of the ball, but their penalty area entries are higher because they're a little more direct, or they've got some athleticism that allows them to get into certain positions. So for them it works, and that's great, and fair play to them. And we've got to put ourselves in a situation where we can play against it and still be successful. But it's entertaining, I think, and it depends what the goal of the coach is, what the background of the coach is, the belief of how it should be played. And that's what the perfect thing about the game, right? It's so diverse in that there's a million ways it can be played to get to the same result. But there's, then you think about the youth game, you think about clubs that players have come from. Is there certain clubs that certain college teams are picking up from a lot more than others, maybe because of the style of play that they're playing? And I think you see a little bit more of that now as well. Obviously, when you go recruiting and stuff, I know for me, there's certain teams that I lean towards watching a little more than others, because not that I want to make my job any easier, but you pick a player up for us from a team that plays similarly to the way that we do, then that the ideal, the philosophy, but also the investment and the buying into it is already there. So I think there's a wider variety even in a club game now, that then kind of transcends into the college game.
Yeah, staying on that, you don't work in the club game, but obviously you watch hundreds of games a year. Whereas college, I think 10 years ago, we all loved to knock the college game because there was the directness, and there was, maybe if you're sitting back against an opponent who had more than you had, there was the park the bus mentality. Yeah. And then everyone was like, well, we should improve the styles. Now I think that we're actually looking at some of those styles and saying, yeah, I actually enjoy this now. It's a little bit different, and it's more variability. Like, when you look at the youth landscape, do you see it as being a lot of the same, or do you see yourself having to work hard to go and find differences?
I think a little bit of both. I think there's definitely, even in the past 3-4 years, there's like, I mean, even just sitting here now, certain teams pop into my head where I'm like, I've watched their 3 different age groups and they all play the same. So I think some...
Go on, tell me a club.
And I know NC Courage, for example, play, in my opinion, tremendous soccer. Yeah. To where they, again, similarly to us, there's a high level of fluidity, a high level of rotation. It's a positional play of sorts, but there's a definite evolution to it. And I think, so I know going to watch a Courage game, I'm going to see movements from their fullbacks, from their wingers, from their centre mids that we're asking our players to do as well. So then it's like, okay, that's a really great group for us to watch. And then there'll be other teams where it's a little more direct, and then it's tough, and it's if their centre mids don't really touch the ball during the game, it's hard to evaluate them. So I think there's a little bit of everything, and I think not to say again, there's some more direct teams out there that are very successful, and there's certain college teams that play that way, that they see that and they're like, they're perfect for me, which goes back to the idea of I think for the kids that are trying to get recruited, pay attention to the way that the colleges are playing. Even just this past week, obviously now we can talk to the 27s, and a big part of our identity is the way that we're playing, is the idea that we feel we can develop through it. So it's a big talking point for me on these calls. So when there's certain players are like, yeah, style of play is not really important, that's okay, because I think I can I'm on the phone in the first place because I've seen pieces that I feel would allow them to thrive in what we're doing. Is that going to be slightly harder to maybe develop or get that investment from? Maybe. Some players want to go to a team that is fully established and winning immediately, and I completely understand it. So we're selling a slightly different vision there, but I think, I don't know as well. I think in America, like we kind of touched on earlier, in England, like we just play football. Whereas here, like these kids are, they're sending us. I also play basketball. I run track. I do all these other things, which helps them athletically, I'm sure. Does it allow them to kind of zone in and find the style of play that they're passionate about, or have an awareness about them to this is where I fit best? I don't know, but I think it's. I do advocate for it. I think it's getting better. I think now I go to certain events and I'm seeing more soccer that I think has an additional thought process behind it, which is positive.
All right, let's get into pre-season because I think that builds some of this, getting an insight to the coaching style as well. When a new player comes in and you've done a great job articulating kind of like the things you look for and the environment they're coming into, and it's player driven and you're looking to improve them. But when they come in here, I'm guessing that the level of 24-hour kind of day-to-day information, teaching is going to be quite high, probably higher than they've been exposed to before. And they're also coming in and you probably, I'm guessing, need them year one to play. Right. So how do you kind of balance between information overload and kind of teaching consistently? Like, how do you gauge that one?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough one. I think that kind of goes back a little bit to if we're recruiting a player from a team that plays similarly anyway. I fully believe you never really know, like you see them for their club, you see them, if there's national team experience, that's great. But who they are there can be very different to what they're going to be for you. So there's always for me, it's always exciting. Like what do we have? Like the very first day of pre-season, I love it because you're like, what are we working with here? And I think there's the way that we want to play. I think a part that I love about it is where it is so, it's not complex, I don't think necessarily. I think there's like I said, we challenge them to be able to problem solve. I think in an ideal world, we're doing all the work during the week to where I can sit comfortably on the sidelines and allow the players to problem solve for themselves. And then, you go into how can we, every situation, can we go into game state, to all these different pieces in training. Pre-season is so short. So we have to, a lot of the time, I think that's why we want to kind of really tune in on this IDP, the individual development piece within the staff as well, because myself, for example, I know that my enjoyment, I think that's a really important part, and my passion is the tactical overview piece. And then we had an ID camp the other day, and I'm talking to my assistant. We're doing this little unopposed piece, and she's like, in that, do you want them to, like, they're receiving on that foot, do you want them to play with the other one? And like in my head, I'm like, I just want it to get from A to B. But like, she's so centered on these details, and I love that because I'm not. So it's it's an incredible complement to each other, I think. And I think our big thing going into pre-season was, let's make sure that every session is tactically driven, but then there's certain coaching principles within it that are going to look at the technical piece, because without the execution, we can't execute the tactical piece anyway. So I think we're trying to be very intentional about what we're coaching when, because then you come into, there's load, there's fatigue, there's, do you want to do the attacking side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball when they're most fresh? When do you introduce set pieces? Because it's a tough piece to implement to the level that most people want to. So when it comes to the individual, I think we will coach as a whole, and then we'll use a lot of film, we'll use a lot of individual conversations, particularly from additional staff members, to make sure that the little nuances are taken care of. But then even on top of that, there's players that are going to learn in different ways. So again, we even through the summer, again, completely voluntary because it has to be, but sending out kind of questionnaires to gain additional insight from everybody, not just the freshmen, but how do you best learn? And some people don't know the answer to that. But, I think for the generation we're working with, I think there's a big visual element to it. So, we'll be intentional. We'll take the tactic board out there. We'll do, not for long, but 5-10 minutes of film before a session, and particularly if it's a principle that we feel isn't more complex, but maybe it's more new. So I think we're just the intentionality of it, and I think we coming in, even with returners, even coming in, we're like, I think this is an area that we're going to have to work on in quite a high demand, and this area I think is something they'll pick up on quite quickly. So, and then obviously you do 2-3 days of pre-season, and you're like, didn't think that was going to happen. So then you kind of have to reevaluate again anyway. But it's always, again, I love problem solving, and I think pre-season is a big problem to solve essentially, which is great.
How do you approach science, which obviously can take away? We've been quite critical on it actually when I think of the last few months about the role of science. I mean, how challenging is that in college, and how much are you looking at numbers versus, I know that the quality's dropped and maybe we need a day here? Yeah,
I think it's hard, and even here, like in previous places that I've worked, and even here a little bit, like I've kind of, with a very limited sports science background, tried to take on that role of we're choosing 8 to 10 metrics that we're looking at and trying to dive into them a little bit to look at and calculate game readiness, and even readiness going into every training session. And again, I think there's a lot to be said about, this is great if this is what the science says, but if one of the players doesn't feel great or they feel like they're tired, the science isn't measuring that. So it's a lot of, again, I think that the idea of a questionnaire piece is going to be something that we try to integrate again, and the more information we get from them, and then you find trends, you find behaviours. Some players are going to be like, I'm fine all the time. Some are going to be like, I'm tired all the time. But then you know that there's a certain element of, we need to keep an eye on this player a little more. We need to manage this player in a certain way. So I think just making sure that we treat them all individually, still using the numbers. I think we use the numbers a lot more here though, I think to make sure that our training sessions are at a level that we want them to be, in terms of reaching certain thresholds, whether it's distance, whether it's sprints, whether it's high distance running. It's never to suggest that no one's worked hard enough. I think fortunately we're at a level where that's never really an issue. But it's more, okay, again, in very limited sports science, but we want this to be a medium type volume day. So obviously for us, what can we control? The size of the grid we're working in, the numbers that are in it, the rest to work ratio. We can look at these pieces. We've got data from the past 2 years to where like we can cut each individual drill within the session as well and be like, the last time we've done this, these are the numbers that we got from it. So we can use the past numbers to then kind of determine, I think this would fit into this session if we're trying to get this outcome, and then creating our sessions like that, whilst then also recognising we've got new players from all over the country, all over the world, playing in extreme heat right now. So that's obviously something to factor in as well. There's so many different variables that we have to take into account, and sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But I think continually asking again to make it player driven. And then we as a staff have a big investment in reflection on the session, on what went right, what we didn't like, what we did, what we'll use again, what we won't, even down to coaching points, how they were made. I think we like to, again, be really intentional in that reflection to make sure that we're delivering the information, but more so driving the environment that we're looking to create.
Brilliant. Do you, last year you did the set pieces on the same day as the game, the morning of the game?
Yeah.
Still going to do that? Yeah.
We'll see. The girls have their way, no, which I completely understand. I think, again, I'm, for better or for worse, I think I'm a coach and a person who believes there's always a better way, which is crippling sometimes, yeah. But it helps me to tune into this growth mindset piece for me, and again, listening to the team and weighing up, this is what they want. Do they want this for the right reasons? What is actually best for them? Sometimes an inconvenience can be best for them. I would like to be able to integrate them a little more throughout the week. I think there's also, we're going to change how we go about not only coaching but executing set pieces as well that might make it a little simpler for them to, one, to understand, two, to retain the information, hopefully generate a little more success.
Bringing in, you mentioned there, I assume that was Nikki you're talking about with the technical stuff.
Yeah.
So when you're bringing in a new coach, who's obviously chomping at the bit as well to get involved and the coach, you said there about looking at the coaching. Is that something that you have to, I mean, there's something that I noticed when I went to the session last year was that you got all the coaches worked.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, hey guys, if you see anything, let me know and I'll keep and you go. But you're a believer that everyone's going to do their fair bit.
Yeah. I think a big thing for me in a head coaching role is learning obviously as an assistant, I was really fortunate. I felt very needed, very wanted, and I really enjoyed my role, and that's something that I've wanted to obviously now as a head coach make sure that I pass on to assistants as well. I think for them it's finding out, one, what part do you mostly enjoy, because as you know, in college there's a lot of busy work that isn't always the most enjoyable. So one, it's making sure that everyone has something that they love to do, that they're really passionate about. And then finding our staff and finding the pieces. How can we all collaborate here and make sure that we have, every piece covered that we want, and making sure that whilst we're on the same page, we feel comfortable that holistically we're able to cover all of our bases and make sure that we're creating the best environment possible. So yeah, for the staff that we have, every coach has kind of a main piece, one that they're passionate about, that they're interested in, that they feel is a strength for them to coach, to deliver from an individual or a collective basis. But with that being said, we want to be comfortable to where the girls will know who the specialist per se is in whatever phase of play it is, but it'll also be a case of they feel comfortable talking to any of us, because a big piece for the staff is that we want to make sure we're on the same page, obviously, in every phase of play and everything that we do.
The off season you went, and you don't have to go too much into this detail, but you went and got some support and help on the data side to get another set of lenses on what you're trying to do. And has data changed much of the system or much of your processes for the next 3 to 4 months?
I think it confirmed what I already knew, which was reassuring. Two, it was like, oh wow, okay, this is an area that we massively need to work on. And I think there's the evolution of data is interesting in the past couple of years, and how certain coaches are using it. It was something that we were able to use almost as a curriculum for the spring, to be like, and I go back to this idea of building sustainable success. So I knew, for example, last year, I wanted us to be comfortable having the ball. I wanted us to be able to control games having the ball, which I think we did really well. However, very evidently didn't create near enough chances, didn't progress the ball nearly enough. And then the numbers don't lie. That was very evident from the data that I was receiving as well. And so it was something like, okay, how can we add a little more verticality to the game? How can we look at certain movements? How can we help the girls to look forward first? And and then making sure that they understand that doesn't mean that we're just going long and looking in behind or anything like that all the time. And if it's best to recycle the ball because the space is on the weak side, fantastic, but we have to have that additional awareness about us. So it was eye-opening using it, and I think it wasn't so much a change, but it kick-started that evolution for us as to, okay, last year we were able to control games. I think the next piece of the puzzle for us this year is, now I want to create more opportunity. I want us to be more dangerous in certain parts of the pitch, whether we execute or not. I have to tell myself that I'm okay, because the next piece of the process is to create that part of the game for us, with a longer term goal of, again, if I want it to be sustainable, then I can't expect us to be perfect overnight. So kind of giving myself this 3-4 year plan, to where by maybe a certain year, certain time of year, I want us to be at a point where we can compete nationally. That's the goal. So, competing for championships, but more importantly, stay there. I wanna make Coastal a team that is able to successfully compete every year. And I knew coming in, and then even more so once getting into the environment, that was going to take some time. But I enjoy that. I enjoy the journey that we're on, and I think seeing and being able to recognise little bits of success are really important. I listened to an Emma Hayes podcast yesterday, and she calls them like champagne moments. So like finding the little victories and the little pieces where we're like, I think a light bulb's just clicked there for players, and then obviously seeing them do an action and then seeing them do it again and again because they recognised it was the right thing to do, is really fulfilling for us. So it's pushed, the data's pushed along the evolution. I don't think it's changed things necessarily, but it was definitely both eye-opening and reassuring to what that next level of development was for us.
And then similarly, coach education, taking your coaching license, your A license, has that, because people, again, strive to some of these licenses and think, oh, if I could get to this license, not to say anything negative against it, I think licenses are really, really important. But when you're operating at a pretty high level and you're taking the license, what does it do?
I think for me, it allowed me to reset a little bit and think again, and that was it was really interesting actually. That was even over a period of time. Like a lot of the licenses are like 6 months, and you come head on to things early on in the license, and it's different to what you currently do, and you're like, that can't work. Like what does and then you try to kind of implement it, and you're picking little pieces, and then I think even subconsciously you're now thinking in a slightly different way, which is great. I think in terms of, like I said earlier, I want to continually get better. I want for my staff, my team, all of us in every aspect of our lives. And I think being able to think again and say, actually, I can see why that would work. How can I, similarly to looking at an Emma Hayes, for example, or or a Pep or whoever, looking at these different coaches and saying, I really like how they're doing that. But it's not even just what they're doing, it's how they're doing it. And then, okay, now the question is, how could we bring that into our environment, adapt it, adjust it, evolve it so that it works for us? It can't just be a carbon copy. But I think the licenses were interesting, and there was little pieces for me that I didn't necessarily expect to learn and to grow in. And I think a big piece for me was not the importance of my staff, because I've always known that, but how to delegate and how to split up coaching pieces to where it can be really positive for the girls, and so that they can get more out of all of us, because I've got an incredible staff that have so much to give, and I want to make sure that not intentionally, but that I'm not restricting them or not allowing them to be, as free as they want to be able to provide coaching and create those relationships. I think that was a big piece for me. I like how the licenses now, I think they kind of attack all aspects of a coach. It isn't just the game model, just plan style. It's what is your relationship with the players on an individual, a collective, how are you managing yourself? I think that was a big piece for me. We're creating kind of a professional development plan, and it's asking some questions that require a lot of reflection, and you're like, oh wow, this is something that I need to actively try and change. And then a lot of these things we're asked to reflect on and evolve that document, for example, throughout the course. And by the end of it, you're like, it gives you 6 months to slowly implement it to where it can almost become habitual. So it was really insightful. There were pieces to it where you look at it and you're like, that's good for a different environment, maybe not so much my own, but a lot of them now as well, they allow you some autonomy within it to arrive at those light bulb moments at your own pace, which at the time I think I was very much like, I want to grow, I want to get better, tell me how to do it, without realising the full effect of actually when I arrive at that solution myself, it's far more rewarding anyway.
That's brilliant. The piece then there at the end there, the kind of managing yourself, and you said there before about when you're always looking at getting things better, you said the word crippling, and that makes me think that, again, you're just constantly thinking over challenges or even solutions, the better options. which is naturally going to take place in your house, in your backyard, church on a Sunday, wherever it is naturally going to take place. How do you, in today's world of, again, like there is a lot, I think there's more pressure in college today. I think there's more noise just around football in general. We were in a period of aggressive growth in sport as well. It's just hard to be a coach today.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
I'm really fortunate that I've got an incredible family at home. She'll enjoy this. A little one who's just about to turn 2. She doesn't give me much time to think about anything else. She definitely keeps me on my toes. So I didn't always believe this idea, like pre-family, more than myself, of this idea of there's time for all of it, and it's not going to change my mindset. I love the job. It's a career. Like, I want to be thinking about it all the time. And even the past couple of years, she runs on the field after a game. She doesn't know if I've won or lost. She doesn't know if my team competed well or we performed well or if I did well. She just wants to see me. So I'm like, it's the best feeling in the world. So I have a little help, and then I think you have to be intentional about it. And it's something that I'm pretty sure I can probably speak for most people. It's really difficult to find that balance. Like Nikki and I, we laugh about, we're like, oh yeah, I had this thought in the shower. And then we're like, oh, it gets all foggy and you're drawing up formations, and it's like, all right, it's not that far. But, I'm in there and I'm thinking of a starting 11, and I do that far too frequently during the day. But you find little moments, and I think fortunately, I multitask quite well. So although it seems like maybe at times I'm not present, I'm able to semi-do both. And then technology helps, because now you can schedule messages to send later and you can schedule emails to send later. So, I try to be very conscious of my players' time, of the, my staff's time, to where I have a thought at 10 o'clock. They don't want to hear my thought at 10. So I'm going to schedule it and they're going to receive it at 9 a.m. in the morning, which is fine. I'm really fortunate that I've got an incredible family at home. She'll enjoy this. A little one who's just about to turn 2. She doesn't give me much time to think about anything else. She definitely keeps me on my toes. So I didn't always believe this idea, like pre-family, more than myself, of this idea of there's time for all of it, and it's not going to change my mindset. I love the job. It's a career. Like, I want to be thinking about it all the time. And even the past couple of years, she runs on the field after a game. She doesn't know if I've won or lost. She doesn't know if my team competed well or we performed well or if I did well. She just wants to see me. So I'm like, it's the best feeling in the world. So I have a little help, and then I think you have to be intentional about it. And it's something that I'm pretty sure I can probably speak for most people. It's really difficult to find that balance. Like Nikki and I, we laugh about, we're like, oh yeah, I had this thought in the shower, and then we're like, oh, it gets all foggy and you're drawing up formations, and it's not that far. But I'm in there and I'm thinking of a starting 11, and I do that far too frequently during the day. But you find little moments, and I think fortunately I multitask quite well. So although it seems like maybe at times I'm not present, I'm able to semi-do both. And then technology helps, because now you can schedule messages to send later and you can schedule emails to send later. So I try to be very conscious of my players' time, of the my staff's time, to where I have a thought at 10 o'clock. They don't want to hear my thought at 10. So I'm going to schedule it and they're going to receive it at 9 a.m. in the morning, which is fine.
But does that work the other way as well, where you don't want to hear that of course the door's always open and you want to hear a problem, but do you have boundaries at a certain point where guys, I need this day, or I need some time here, or do you set any of those?
I should, I think, and yeah, if you ask my other half, she'll tell you that I definitely should, and she's completely right. I think it's a big piece for me, and I don't think this is necessarily right, but I am so invested in my team as people, and I wouldn't want to change that. And not that I feel this crazy responsibility for them, but I do want to be available for them. So it's finding that time to, and I think if if they're texting me, I think, you know, they're fully aware. I integrate my family into everything that we do, so they know if I don't respond, it's probably for good reason, and we have that trust and that relationship with the players that, you know, they also know if it's urgent, I'm going to get to the phone and I'm going to make sure I'm there. So I think I'm really lucky with the team that I have, first of all, in terms of the understanding, in terms of them wanting my family to be a part of that is amazing. But it's, yeah, the boundary piece is tough, especially even through this recruiting period right now. You know, can we schedule an 8 o'clock phone call? I'm like, no, I'm putting Ivy to bed. Like, nothing comes before that. So there's, you know, I'm happily able to make those boundaries. I think once you know the players and they're here and you create that relationship, it's a little more difficult, but then they also know more about me and my life. And I think a lot of them, I'm really fortunate that I have a group that are able to think outside of themselves a little bit and recognise that, you know, there's more to our lives than just being a coach as well. Us seeing them as people first and the players seeing their coaches as people first is something that we really work on as well, because I think that's, again, part of the trust, the foundation, the environment that we're trying to create.
Brilliant. All right, last two for you. Just on that advice, so for a coach who's looking at a similar pathway to yourself, really, who's going into coming out of the college game as a player and maybe going into that, I'm just thinking and laughing, going into an assistant coach role and then thinking, looking at a head coach and going, God, a lot of people say this off air, like when I'm asking like what's next and stuff, a lot of people are like, yeah, I look at person X and think, God, I don't know if I want that. Yeah. How did you, or like, what's your advice for, do you think it's better to have a goal and say, listen, in 10 years I want to be there? Or do you think it's better to kind of take your time with this thing and try to work it out? Or
yeah, I think it's good to have goals, but it's never linear. You know, it's never that straightforward. And if you're willing to create goals, then also be willing to reevaluate them, because there's going to be things that pop up. I mean, like the change of college landscape now is causing a lot of coaches to not want to be in the game, and completely understand it. I think a big thing is, don't be afraid to ask for help. Definitely don't think that you know it all, because you don't and you never will. But for me, like, embrace that the game evolves every day, every week, every year, and your team are going to do the same. You have to do the same. You have to keep up with it. So I think be willing to evolve, embrace the growth, embrace the challenges. But I think you have to really love it, and it has to be about more than football. I think to be in the college game, it has to be about more than football. And if you have a love for, I know for me, it's relationships, it's connection. If you have that, great. If it's something else, then, you know, I'm sure there's lots of different other things that you can have a passion for that make this job really worthwhile as well. But yeah, I think ask for help, find yourself someone to look up to, someone to be able to talk to about just about every aspect of it, and then yeah, be open to change, open to challenges, and yeah, nothing's going to be quite what you think it's going to be. No, but that's good. Again, if you can adapt to that, and if you're comfortable with that, then I think it's great. It's, you know, incredibly rewarding.
I say it's along similar lines, but I think it's all connected. First off, what kind of doesn't surprise me, but I think what's really unique about your coaching is that you can tell quite quickly when you meet you that you are passionate about people and that the people is a motivator and it energizes you. But then also, you can also tell when you have football conversations that the X's and O's, like, just get the head going, and then all of a sudden it's this. And sometimes we think that's two different ways, right? There's the people person, and there's this strategist or the tactician, and you seem to have in something you said earlier about thinking what you love or finding what you love in the game. Both of those pieces are important to you.
Yeah.
So they can go together.
I think so. It's a high capacity piece. It takes up a lot. Like you said earlier, in your mind, and it's something to, not that I need to escape from it. That's not necessarily the right word, but to be able to be present in other instances. But it is so rewarding. And I think I have a curiosity about me, and I think both of those things require a lot of curiosity. Like the game evolves, and not thinking about, you know, a certain formation or anything like that, but the how and the why. And people are the same, right? You get some pretty complex people. I've met some incredible people, both players, staff, coaches, admin, everyone going through this. And the relationship piece is huge. Like I said, there's players that I've coached that I'm really, really good friends with because we're of similar age, because I started when I was quite young. And there's players that have, you know, gone on to play professionally, and for me, if that was their dream, I'm someone that's going to become my dream. As cliche and cheesy as that sounds, like there's nothing that makes me prouder than seeing somebody play professionally if that's what they wanted. Much like if they want to go to law school and they get into their desired law school, or they want to be a doctor. Like there's a player that I had at my very first job. She went through as much school as being a doctor requires, and now she's a surgeon, which is unbelievable. And I've got a player from Arizona State, and she's actually, it's funny because we speak relatively often, and you know, we're 3 years removed. When the year that I left was the year she graduated, and she texted me the other day, and she plays at Tigres, and she was like, how far are you from the Raleigh-Durham area? We're going to go play NC Courage on July 9th. She comments on photos of Ivy all the time. Like we still communicate a fair bit. And then I was like, are you going to be there? And she was like, yeah. 10 minutes later, I'm booking a ticket, because I'm like, it's the first time since we left that I'm getting to see you play professionally. And I'm so excited about it, because I was like, I love winning. I love winning championships. But seeing her do that, like I was like, I'm going to be crying. I'm going to be... There's so much more to it. So I think they go hand in hand, because I want to help if I can. You become the best player you can, of course, but also the best person. You know, I've had even players here, players at previous schools that have difficult upbringings, that come from difficult backgrounds. And then there's an additional responsibility there, right or wrong, that I feel for them. You know, but it's those things that enhance the relationship and enhance the fact that it goes far beyond football. I think, you know, growing up playing it, watching it, it's you know, my wife, she's always like, you watch it all the time, like stop working. I'm like, it's not just work, it's so enjoyable, right? So it's something that I should probably try and find another hobby or two, but I just love it, so that's never going to disappear. But then marry that with a relationship piece, and it's a perfect job in that sense. And I think like now, like being in a coaching environment for so long, like I'm not that coach actually that analyzes everything that happens. I am able to sit back and watch it for enjoyment. And you know, then the patriot part of me, like when England are playing in the Euros, like the women start next week obviously, or the World Cup, I'm the first, like I'm decked out in my England stuff, and I'm watching it from a purely passion standpoint. You know, watching the men over the years, it's not been the best football in the world by any means. At that point, I don't care. Like I just want them to win. But it is, it's like it can transcend you for sure. And I don't know. Hopefully, people have that in their lives in lots of different ways. But I think we're fortunate to have such a love for the game that's what it does for us.
Joe, absolutely brilliant, outstanding. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate.